It's Malcolm, and thank you for joining me on Manly Ego. And we're going to talk about the ego in a more positive way than I have in many of the other videos. Now, it's not so much talking about the ego negatively or that it's that bad thing. It's just, I guess I'm in the habit, and I believe many people are in the habit of looking at the ego as this bad thing, this evil thing, this thing that destroys the personality or our pride and whatnot. But in my opinion, and there'll be other opinions, but as I've told you before, and especially in the disclaimer, and if you haven't seen the disclaimer, look at my story and you'll see it there, that these are my thoughts, my opinions from stuff that I've read and listened to, and I've gathered my own thoughts and opinions from there. So check the disclaimer. That covers me. The ego isn't just this bad thing that we look at and talk about so negatively, because when certain things happen, we react. And let me say, she's egotistical, he's egotistical. But the ego is there to protect us. So protecting is in its own right a positive thing. Is that fair to say? And it's protecting something that means or is of value to us. So it means something or is of value. So for example, our values, our morals. Does the ego show up when our values or our morals are being tested, being challenged? Or maybe as we're discovering new values and morals? For example, you call me something that I don't agree with, and it really strikes that nerve, and I react. Maybe I don't react in the best way. Maybe I'm too aggressive or forceful. Maybe I'm too passive and meek and weak or whatever. But maybe that's because my ego has been affected by what you said. Now, this is bringing attention, in my opinion, to what could mean something to me or could mean something to someone. And maybe that then gives us an avenue to explore a bit deeper. I really reacted strongly when that was said or that was done. It wasn't even done to me, but I saw it and I didn't like it. Why? Because if that was me, that would have really hurt me. That would have really upset me. That would have offended me. That's not something I'm prepared to stand for. So I'm sure you get the point. For me, the ego is also there as that, can I say that, standard bearer for us, like it's something we're going to accept, it's something we're not going to. And I think that's a positive thing, because there is situations where I've turned around or I thought to myself later, do you know what? I'm glad I stood up for myself there, right? I know you can relate to that. I'm glad I stood up for myself there. I'm glad she stood up for herself. I'm glad he stood up for themselves. I'm glad they stood up for themselves. Because it meets our values, our morals. And we know that our ego would have had a reaction in that situation if it was us. What's your opinions? Do you agree? Do you disagree? Am I talking waffle? Do I have a point but I'm not explaining it well enough? What do you feel about that? That maybe the ego is looked at too negatively in certain aspects? I certainly do think it is looked at negatively in too many aspects, and I'm glad there is an ego kicking around in here somewhere, however it looks, however it's meant to feel, because it definitely helps in certain situations.